Paul, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you, Haas. I'm glad to be here and delighted that we could connect.
Absolutely.
You're good.
All right, so tell me a little bit about your career. I understand that when COVID started, you had a major disrupt and you traveled across the world. So what were some of the main lessons that you've learned of maintaining your balance in these times of disruption?
Mm. Oh, wow. What a question. Yes. So let's go to the COVID question. In December 2019, I joined a company that was in Memphis. They're still in Memphis. They're a wonderful company. They actually did some of the print work for a previous company I worked at, and I was invited to join them directly. So off I went, and I was traveling between Philadelphia, New York, and Memphis to be with that company at their various offices. And in March of 2020, everything hit, right? And so I got that phone call on a Thursday. Paul,
Yeah.
we're going to have to shut down the department, and if you could leave town by Saturday. Oh, I'm just one of millions of people that were impacted by this. So I knew at that time this is a really big deal, and this employer is trying to work with me to figure it out. So I did leave town by Saturday, but by that point, like the truck had been scheduled. I was supposed to move to Memphis. I had already rented a house and ordered the furniture, and I had done a variety of things to see my future in Memphis. And so initially, when that phone call came in, of course, I was, I'll say upset. I wasn't angry. I wasn't confused. My life, in a way, was upset. And so the value of the relationship I had with that person, though, with my vice president, she still is. She was fantastic. She's still fantastic. And I'm so glad that I built that strong relationship with her, because when she called me, I knew that's what the phone call was about.
Did you
And
sense it
then
before? Like,
I sensed it because earlier in the week, she called me and said, "Hey, don't come to the office. Why don't you just stay in the hotel and work remotely?" I was like, okay, they're making decisions. That's great. No big deal. I'll be there when that decision is made. And because of that great rapport that I had with her, still have with her, when she called and told me, this is the end of the line, we're going to have to end things. We need you to move back to Philadelphia. You won't be employed with our company anymore, but we do think there's a future of some consulting sort of work. And so don't give up. We still want to keep you in the Rolodex, but Saturday will be the day that we'd like you to fly back to Philadelphia, just to be safe for yourself and also as a best result for everyone involved, so that we're not elongating anything or making it sort of last beyond what it needs to. So I flew back on Saturday, and wouldn't you know it, I post something on LinkedIn, as one does. It's one of those "it's with great regret" sort of messages. And that evening, I got a phone call from a previous employer, and it's the one I had left in December, so just 3 months prior. And they said, "Hey, you used to run the training department here. Could you help us with a technology rollout that we have?" Immediately I said yes, because I knew who was calling. I knew why they were asking for this. In fact, they had been asking for it while I was at that employer, and I just wasn't ready at that time because there was another opportunity somewhere else. So when they called this time, I said, absolutely. How soon can I start? And so I started on Tuesday as a contractor. So I was a consultant for another 4 years with them, and I was so glad to, in a way, step right back into where I was.
That's phenomenal. So when COVID started, you got pretty much during all the layoffs, you were one of the people, and then you took that, and within a couple of days, as you were still kind of like in I want to say the shock of it, you had this phone call. It's kind of like a breath of relief.
It was. And so then the story continues, because that contract ends. And I mentioned I was in it for four years, and it was a wonderful 4 years because I had the relationships, and so I could continue speaking with the people, the key stakeholders that I had already known there. So I could just sort of walk back in as if I had left for a long weekend. So it was great. It was really nice to have strong relationships. from there, the contract ended, and so I started working with another company.
Mm,
And then, yes, I did move halfway around the world because I got a phone
yeah.
call from a company in Saudi Arabia that wanted me to join them. And it was the right opportunity at the right time. So I'm sitting in Saudi Arabia now.
That's fantastic. Okay, so I'm speaking to several people right now, and they're concerned actually of getting laid off. Like there's some
Mm,
chatter and stuff like that.
yeah.
What was it like for you to experience those few days of like, okay, what now? What was the emotion? What was the internal dialogue?
There's the stages of grief for sure. And so uh, I think I got through the denial stage pretty quickly. but
Okay.
but that's I chuckle, but that's a real stage. That how could this happen to me? I thought this was my long term plan. I thought they valued me. I thought I had relationships here.
Mm,
And one of the things that I have spoken about in the past is that piece of paper in a drawer somewhere that incorporated the organization. It doesn't have feelings. We have
mm,
feelings for the people around us and the relationships that we've created and the work that we have a passion for. But that piece of paper is what survives. It's what enables the organization to continue. And so, uh, if the organization decides we can't have this many people, or now is not the time to have this headcount, or now is not the time to continue the project, or to have
mm,
this team, it really comes through as a shock. And so denial, absolutely. Anger as
yeah.
well. Like, oh, now I have to
Mm,
redo it all. Like I built this, and here I have to
yeah.
again. Absolutely anger, and then bargaining. You go through
Yeah.
bargaining, like, well, could I have a couple more weeks, or what about healthcare? Could I keep that for a little bit longer?
Mm,
Or in my case, because as I mentioned, I had ordered furniture, rented the house, scheduled the movers. There was bargaining. There was definitely a negotiation of how do I exit this in a
yeah.
healthy way for both of us. Because, uh, and again, credit to that company, they wanted to make sure everyone was taken care of. But in that moment, sort of having that clarity of mind to say, hold on a minute, I put out a bunch of money for this. How is this going
Mm,
to be? How is this going to work out? And so the bargaining, and then eventually getting to a stage where you're looking forward to the future. And so,
mm,
if there's a recommendation I can make is go through those stages,
right.
experience yourself as you are, because others might not validate your feelings. They might be going through the same thing and they might have been laid off at the same time, but allow yourself to experience those moments where
Yeah.
it doesn't feel great.
Right. So, in terms of looking forward to the future, I mean, the
Mhm.
immediate future, thinking about it can be stressful if somebody just got laid off. But I
Mhm.
guess we're talking about maybe like long-term future.
Yes, long-term future, but also when you consider the future, what happens? And this is a question I love to ask people when they leave companies. What did the next day waking up feel like? So when you literally opened your eyes that next morning, what went through your mind?
Mm,
Because most other days you're thinking, okay, I gotta like take a shower, I gotta walk the dog, gotta feed the kids, gotta do the whatever, scrape the car off, it's winter. You're
yeah.
probably thinking of all the regular things, the
Hmm.
routine things that you take care of. But today isn't like that. It's not that same old day of, well, this is what I always do. And so even as you consider your future, those next few days are really important for how you set yourself up. Do you
Mm,
stay in that space where you are processing those emotions, and how long do you stay there? You get to decide that. But also, what's your plan to move forward? Are you going to hop on
right.
LinkedIn with an update? Are you going to create a spreadsheet of all the jobs you've applied to? Are you going to start calling your really good friends? Are you going to reach out to a coach? What is
Mm,
what are those early steps? Because you do need to think about what is my future. If the company made a decision, now's your chance to make your decisions.
yeah. That's really cool. So what I'm hearing is relationships, right?
Mhm,
The way
mhm.
you'll maintain your balance in this time of disruption is relationships and going through the stages of grief, not just immediately toughening up and trying to, I don't know, appear strong to yourself or to others.
Mhm, mhm.
Because from my perspective, being in the being a professional or being in the corporate world specifically, we don't want to necessarily show vulnerability because we want to show that we can be trusted and that we are reliable.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go through that stage of grief, and I don't want people to see me go through that stage of grief. But what I hear you saying, which I agree with, is relationships and stages of grief or whatever, going through the emotion, and then having a future plan, looking forward to what's gonna
True.
happen next.
Yes, yes. And during that period, someone might be thinking, well, Paul, that sounds great, but what about my family? My kids are still relying on me. I can't just stay in bed in your
Yeah,
example. It's this tricky balance of how do you take care of yourself while also providing for others, which you've been doing while you were employed. The balance
yeah,
just shifts now. Where are the spaces where you can, so what room do you go to wallow?
yeah.
Whereas what
Right,
room do you go to? What space do you go to work with the family?
right, right. So in terms of relationships, what would you say
Mhm.
to young professionals or even seasoned professionals when it comes to relationships, either starting and maintaining relationships or even rekindling old relationships?
There's a phrase that goes, "Don't burn bridges," right? So from either side. So in terms of relationships, be valuable while you're there. And so I have just joined this company here several months ago, and proving that I'm valuable to them, even though they hired me, so they obviously wanted me, but proving to them that I'm valuable starts building that trust in those relationships so
Yeah,
that when I leave here, because there's got to be that future as well, I have to think about that. When I leave here, I will still value those relationships. And if they call me
yeah.
back for whatever reason, I will have created strong bonds with a variety of people. And so,
Mm,
starting in day one, make yourself valuable, show your value. Perhaps that means sharing something in a meeting, or perhaps it means that you see where the nodes are in the networks at the office
mm,
and you become friends with the nodes. And so
mm,
if it's someone that can really broker relationships and connect you with others, it's good to know that person because they can help you become more visible in the organization. And so that's the starting of relationships. And then when you leave and you want to rekindle a relationship,
yeah,
reference back those times when you were helpful or send them something that's relevant to them, help them. It's Ben Franklin, since I'm from Philly, it's Ben
yeah.
Franklin that said, if you want to make a friend, ask for a favor. In asking for a
Mm,
favor, you create this sort of capital between you.
that's awesome. Okay. So, kind of like one of the things of maintaining relationships is prove I'm valuable or like
Mhm.
provide value. Like provide
Yes.
value, prove I'm
Yeah.
valuable. And
Mhm.
that's really interesting. And another element of I believe is important in maintaining balance in times of disruption, and I know
Mhm.
that you teach that, is knowing what our values are and
Oh,
having
yes.
what our talents are. And you teach something called needs assessment.
Mhm. Mhm.
Can you talk
It's
about
true.
that?
Yes. So, in fact, there's a book out there called Leadership Challenge, and in there, Kouzes and Posner talk about finding your own values. And I don't mean what value you bring to an organization, but for me, fairness is a value, and family is a value.
Mm,
So if I know that those are my values because that's what I grew up with and that's what was in my community and that's what has helped me be successful, if those are
mm,
my values, then how do I apply those in the organizations or situations I'm in?
okay.
The great thing about those values is they're with you always. And so you can apply them at home, in the community, at the office, the grocery store, anywhere that you are. You can use those values to help you make decisions. That
Mm,
knowing that is helpful, but then sharing that is even more helpful because it provides some currency between you. And so if I say, Haas, I
mm,
think it's fair that we do this activity. And here's why it's fair. And here's why I'm making that decision. Or here's why I think we should pursue that decision. That
yeah.
helps Haas understand where's he coming from? How does he operate? If we
Mm,
encounter this again, how will he be? But on the other side of the
right.
coin, if I say, I really value family, and you ask for time off to take care of your family, and I
Yeah.
always say no, well, then there's a dissonance there. There's something broken.
Mm,
I'm paying lip service to the fact that family is important, but I'm not living it. And so
right.
my actions need to line up with those values so that the people around me, whether they report to me or live with me or
Yeah.
see me in a community, they see, yes, this person lives their values.
That's awesome. So I think lining up with our values is that integrity piece, that not only is my value fairness and family, I actually apply them. I speak
That's
them
right.
and I talk them and I do them.
Yes.
What is kind of like an exercise for someone to begin to understand their values a little bit better?
So I certainly mentioned the book, and that's useful. And not my book; it's,
Okay.
it's the Leadership Challenge. In there, Kouzes and Posner talk about values. I also like you mentioned vulnerability earlier, and so it brought to
Mhm.
mind that Brene Brown has worked on the values piece as well. That
Okay.
if you know your values, you can then be guided into your future. And so I was just on her website today. She's got a great PDF that you can download and just look at the list. It's 100
Yeah.
different values, and you can see, oh, you know what? Yeah, this is important to me. And then go test it. Go talk to your family or your friends, and you say, "Have you seen this in me? I
Mm,
think this is important." Another thing that you can do is put those values on an index card, write them down. I know it's
yeah.
100 index cards, but you sort
Uh-huh.
them out. And that can be a great activity because you can say, you know what, this one's important, this one's not important. And as you
Hmm.
go through that card sort, you can then
Yeah.
challenge yourself to say, all right, which 10 are important to me? Which
Uh,
5 are important to me? If I had only 3, which 3 would be important to me? All of them live in us in some strength or another, but
yeah.
you can crystallize your top 5, you're really
Mm,
understanding yourself better.
that's amazing. I have mine over here.
Ah,
I
what do you
think,
know?
right. That's awesome. I love hearing how you're describing it. So, what about talents? Is that something separate? I believe it is.
It is.
Okay.
Talents are like the skills that you bring to the table. Hmm. So I
Yeah.
do not speak Arabic. Let's be clear on that on this podcast. Just letting the world know. And yet, um, what I can bring to someone who speaks a different language are just a few phrases. Now, how do you say hello and thank you and other simple things?
Yeah.
Uh, so maybe I don't have a talent for languages, but my
Mhm.
talent is building relationships, and that
Yeah.
helps do that. So if you have a talent, let's say your talent is singing, how do you bring that to maybe a stressful situation where you sing it away?
Yeah.
You have a talent for music and you just mash at that keyboard for a while until that stress goes away.
Yeah.
Or maybe you have a talent for languages, and so how do you help someone that is struggling as they're trying to, for me, as I was trying to get my driver's license here, it really
Mhm.
helped to have locals that could help me translate things or would
Mhm.
go with me to the right ministry to help me with the
Yeah.
paperwork so that I was we both had that relationship now, but now they can
Mm.
use their talents on my behalf.
That's really amazing. It's kind of like borrowing other or building alliances
Hmm.
to, it's kind of like a puzzle piece. So we have this puzzle piece with this thing over here and this thing over here, and we find people that fit. This way you can have a bigger picture,
It's true. It's true.
more clear picture. That's really
I'm looking over here because I didn't realize that you knew that I was working on a puzzle just now.
nice. That's cool. All right. And then what about the needs assessment? I'm curious to learn about that a little bit.
So, in an organization for talent development, a needs assessment would be what's needed in the organization. So, in this case, it sort of changes our conversation here a bit to say that an organization will say, in the future, we need people that know AI. And as a result, we need to identify the people in our organization as to their strengths. Do they
Mm,
have the strengths in this AI technology? And if we don't, how do we make decisions to help them?
okay.
Or have we decided not to pursue that? And so
Mm,
AI is a certainly a large talking point these days, and all the organizations are chasing it, and employees are worried, am I going to be replaced by AI? So that's one form of needs assessment. Another one is your own. Consider
mm,
what you need. Do your own
right.
needs assessment. If we are bumping into things constantly and not coming back to reflect about what our own needs are, your own needs assessment,
Yeah.
we might continue working on others' needs, what the organization needs versus our own.
Mm, gotcha. Okay. So tying vulnerability to our
Mhm.
next point of feedback. I remember when, so people, may not know this, but when I was still in the corporate world, you trained me and my department for
Mm-hmm.
3 to 4 days, and you told the story that earlier in your career, as you were training people, you thought you were excellent, just top notch, and you were not really receptive to feedback because you thought you were excellent. And then you had a manager who approached you a certain way, and you're like, oh, there is room for improvement. My question here, was it the right timing where you were ready to receive feedback, or was it her or his approach that lowered your guard?
Mm-mm. Hmm. All right, I'll build a bridge between that time and this time. So
Okay.
as I share this answer, yes, at the time I was brought into the organization because they wanted me to help build standards for their trainers. And so I was supposed to be the standard bearer. I connected that to my ego and thought, well, I'm the stuff. They
Yeah.
got me. And so I'm just
Hmm.
going to tell them how it is.
Yeah.
And she sent the message several times, I'll say. And perhaps we can say ignorance is bliss, because I didn't listen to her initially. She would say, Paul, when you give presentations, there are certain movements you do that engage and disengage the audience.
Mm.
I said, no. You remember, you hired me to tell you what to do correctly. So you shouldn't be telling me, even though she was
Right.
my boss. And so I was not receptive because my ego was wrapped up in it.
Yeah.
And I recall earlier in this conversation, I told you, well, gosh, when you join an organization, show your value. And that's at that time how I thought I could show my value. Eventually, she asked, do you mind if I film you?
Mm.
There's my ego, of course.
Right.
Be my guest.
Yeah.
I can't be wrong. And if you do film it, clearly you've doctored it, right? So I can't be wrong.
Mm.
And in seeing the evidence, it really took the air right out of my balloon
Mm.
to see the truth displayed right before me. That even
Yeah.
though she was trying to tell me in multiple ways and multiple occasions, trying to tell me kindly, trying to tell me directly, trying to put it into writing, she finally got video evidence in front of me to say,
Right.
this is what you're doing. And the light bulb finally went on for me to say, oh, well, gosh, there it is. I really do that.
Yeah.
It was at that time that I asked, can you help me? I've been
Mm.
so ignorant to this for such a long time that I realize you have actually been trying to help me, not just to point out my faults.
Yeah.
And so we ran a first trial where she suggested a few things. And I'll tell you, the behavior that I had was this way, and then I would talk and I would go this way, and this was standing in
Yeah.
front of people. And so what Haas would
Mm.
see in these classes is me running from one side to the other side of the room, and I wasn't really
Yeah.
staying on center, which
Mm.
engaged this part of the room, engaged that part of the room, and it just wasn't it wasn't great.
Yeah.
So I asked her, "Can you help me?" She said, "Okay, here are some suggestions." Great. I took her suggestions, and then I
Yeah.
did that wrong. So hard learned. And
Yeah.
instead of going sideways, I still had that energy. And
Mm.
so now I would go forward and backwards and forwards. And even
Okay.
on this podcast, anyone watching this video, you're like, what is with that guy? He's engaging, he's disengaging, he's there, he's not there. And
Yeah.
so she continued working with me until I really got the message that, hey,
Mm.
just find your center, essentially strike a pose, stand behind the lectern or the podium or whatever it is, or stand in the center of the room or stand in the front of the room and just
Mm.
stand. It's okay to be still. You don't
Yeah.
have to use all this energy. Channel the energy somewhere else. And so
Interesting.
in that joining of the company, I thought I was the expert. My ego was involved. And so I thought I was there to fix people. And it turns out I needed the fix.
Mm.
In this company, as I've joined, I'm a facilitator. And so I still stand in front of people and I still teach classes. And that's
Okay.
my full-time job. And
Yeah.
I love it. I really enjoy it. But I did not come to it with ego. And so I see
Mm.
myself operating with a team of peers from around the world who are also facilitators or who are also leaders or managers. And all of us are learning from each other. And that's been much easier for me and my ego because it's not involved.
Yeah, very interesting. So I feel that there is a dichotomy that we have to work with between ego. I would call it or reframe it strength and vulnerability,
Yeah.
because we don't want to be so flexible,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time we don't want to be so rigid. We want to
Yep.
have this kind of like integrated balance between both. So speaking of which, and if we segue to stress management
Yeah.
and potentially in times of disruption, I'm going to share with you a few examples that I've observed and witnessed in my own previous career. I've worked with this really tough person, almost to the point of intimidation. And they shared with me that in their previous company, it was so stressful, they had their face paralyzed for 4 days. And that's when they decided to resign.
Mm-hmm.
That's one example that obviously I cannot forget. And
Wow.
another example is I was working in a company and a person had surgery on their stomach,
Mm-hmm.
and they were right back in the office. I don't remember if it was the same day or right the next day. No rest.
Oh my. Okay.
Right. And then maybe less drastic, potentially more common is I've talked to people and they say that they lose sleep. They can't sleep because of toxic managers, toxic coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
Are these kind of things that people kind of come to you and you train them through? Is that how you see it from your perspective, or is it a little different?
Mm. We see ourselves through a variety of lenses. I'll start there. And one of them could be the victim, another could
Mm,
be the villain, or perhaps the hero. And when someone encounters stress like this, consider who you are in that situation. If we are a victim, then it is easier to sort of feel the pain and to stay in that place where we can't change. But the stories that you tell me suggest that they're not just victims, that there's someone really doing things to them. They're not just pretending to be victims. There's a bully in the office, or there's a pressure from someone to get back to the office so soon, or
mm,
there's something going on with deadlines or workflows that's causing someone to have to stay up late or lose sleep over the fact that they're trying to finish these things. And so when we consider these lenses of villain, victim, or hero, they don't always work so easily as to say, oh, well, you're just a victim, or they're just a villain, or maybe you're trying to rescue somebody else, and so you're having to work these late hours. So,
mm,
to your question of what do I do when somebody comes to me and wants to discuss this and help them work through it, I do ask them, who are you in this situation? I don't ask
mm.
them, are you a hero or a villain or a victim? But
Yeah,
we sometimes give up our power to say that, well, the organization makes me do this, or, there's that one bully at the office. And so to ask the question, who are you in this story,
mm,
helps them depersonalize it. If a story
yeah,
was written, who would Paul be in that situation?
yeah,
It helps see it through someone else's eyes. And perhaps a fly on the wall is another approach to it. If a fly
yeah,
were to see this, what would they see?
yeah,
See, have we given up our power? Have we given up our voice? Have we given up the opportunity to speak up? And we've fallen into the simple roles of, well, I'm just a victim here.
yeah. Gotcha. Okay, so in speaking to people as well, I
Mhm.
noticed that some of the answers would be something like, well, it is what it is, or something like, gotta feed the beast, gotta keep the machine going,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So if I'm asking myself, trying to analyze or assume who are they, victim, villain, or hero, I would
Mhm.
say they are trying to be a hero, but at the same time, they're it's like, well, it is what it is. Like, I'm a victim, but I'm trying to be a hero. I'm trying to keep the job going, trying to put food on the table and be
Mhm.
valuable to the company.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Because Paul said you got to be valuable. That's another thing. I love when people bring up, but you told me that I should try this or I should do this.
Mm,
And it's a fun challenge for me because anyone listening to this podcast or watching the podcast would think,
yeah,
well, all of that is nice and good, but what about the real world? And so, yes, of course, we have phrases like "gotta feed the beast" or "what's your side hustle" or "how are you making it this week" or
Yeah.
whatever the phrase of the day is.
Yeah.
Don't forget yourself in that equation. That doesn't change. And so,
Mm.
yeah, maybe you do got to feed the beast, but have you allowed, and people have come to me about this, have you
Yeah.
allowed yourself to take on additional tasks time over time over time, where now your job is two people's or three people's, and you find yourself working on a weekend just so that you can payroll people?
Mm.
Or have you become so involved in the community that now the bake sale is entirely your responsibility?
Yeah.
Or have you joined a club, a sports league or something, where now you're taking care of all the brackets and all the scheduling?
Yeah.
You're good at it, but please remember yourself in that equation. See where you can set up boundaries so that it doesn't feel like you're being taken advantage of when you look at
That's right.
yourself 3 months from now.
Okay. So when you're coaching someone on that, are
Mhm,
there communication tips or techniques? Like, I know that you worked with all different ranks, you worked in different
mhm,
cultures
mhm,
and CEOs as well. So
mhm.
how do you manage like these tough conversations? Some people like choke up, they can't speak, or their voice changes or their voice shakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, in this case, work the problem, not the person. And
Okay.
so, um, if the problem is long working hours, or if the problem is now all the responsibility is on you for childcare or something else in the house, or if now you see yourself as being the most responsible in whatever it is, like you have a group
Mhm.
project at school and suddenly you're the one that has to compile everything and you're working till 3 a.m. and still going to that 7 or 8 a.m. class. If that's the case and you're finding yourself having a really hard time even bringing it up to people,
Yeah.
slow down and think through it. Go through, there's another class I've taught that considers an organization, excuse me, not an organization planner, a conversation planner. It
Mm.
organizes your conversation. So a conversation planner can be really helpful in this case
Mm.
because what it asks is the facts of the case. What is happening? Not what are your emotions around it, but just what is happening. What do you
Yeah.
see yourself doing? I'm going to bed at 9 p.m. when I expected to be in bed at 8. Or
Mm.
I'm running all of the payroll when I'm supposed to be having help with the payroll. And so, just what are the facts? What are
Yeah.
the effects of that situation? And so, perhaps that is emotional, but very likely it's also the stress or whatnot. What do you hope to happen?
Yeah.
And when would you like it to happen? So what are the facts? What are the effects of those facts? What are the effects on you or others? What do you want to happen and when do you want it to
Mm.
happen by? And then you can consider, who do I speak with about this?
Yeah.
Because maybe you don't have to go to the manager, you just go to the person that you work with at the same level as you and have that conversation. Or maybe you go to your classmates and you tell them, look, what's supposed to happen is four of us each take 25% of the project. What is
Mm.
happening is I have 75% of the project, and it's causing me to not be able to focus on my other classes.
Yeah.
What I hope is that we can go back to the 25% each. And I'd love to have that done by next week.
Yeah.
So, I'm speaking with you about it right now. Instead, we don't think through these conversations. And so we arrive, and it's so easy to play the victim card. Oh, this group is four, and you guys are making me do all the work, and this sucks, and I can't believe you. This is a horrible team. You and you and you. I wish I could fire you. And so
Mm.
we arrive with emotion. We arrive with that ego that I've spoken about, and we don't have a conversation that's constructive. Instead, it destructs even more.
Yeah. Interesting. Have you noticed a shift now that a lot of things are online now, a lot of Zoom meetings?
Yeah.
I've experienced more, especially when I was still having my communication struggles and with my voice
Mhm.
specifically. I noticed that on Zoom, it's even more, I get more nervous when speaking because there's that weird spotlight effect. I have to unmute myself.
Mhm.
Everyone else is muted. I don't know what they're thinking. It's different than sitting in a meeting room at a table, and it's more like natural.
Mhm.
Do you do you have tips for people to speak in a natural way, confident way, without feeling like this weird spotlight effect that we experience on Zoom?
So a couple of things, Hoss. First, it's the responsibility of the person running the meeting to understand what people prefer. So they shouldn't just call on you and say, what would you like to say about this? That can really surprise someone and scatter anyone's mind, even if they're an expert. Because if I was called by the vice president of a company to speak about something, I probably wouldn't be as clear or have my points figured out, just as anyone. I might be an expert, but I'm just not ready to speak about it right then. I don't have my thoughts together. So that's first, to request that the leaders in organizations get to know how people prefer to communicate. Perhaps someone would prefer to use their voice via the chat feature in whatever the software you're using, Zoom or whatnot. Or maybe they ask the questions ahead of the meeting so that you're ready to speak about it at the meeting. I bet so often we arrive to a meeting, we're not quite sure what the agenda is, and then out of the blue, we're called to speak about it. Whether it's in person or online, it doesn't matter. It can become very stressful in that moment because I don't know why I'm here. Now you want me to defend something? This is too much. So let's then proceed into the, what do I do if that does happen? Because it still happens. What do I do if that happens?
Right.
Perhaps, keep in mind, everybody else is taking a sigh of relief. Whew, I didn't get called on. That's good. Meanwhile, you feel like the camera's zooming in on you and that it's getting closer and closer, and that truly it is that spotlight effect, and that you need to be the sudden expert. For everyone, give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Anything you say in that moment, they probably won't remember. So we are our toughest critics. And so if you're suddenly put in the spotlight and they think you're supposed to give this golden gem, if those words belong together, this golden gem, this golden nugget,
right,
shining gem,
right.
this beautiful gem of information, well, maybe this isn't the call for it because they didn't ask you to prepare to provide those remarks. So perhaps start with, good question.
Yeah.
My initial thoughts are, and then maybe you just give 2 or 3 sentences.
Okay.
And you say, you know what, anything else, anything beyond this, I'll either add it to the chat or after the meeting. I think that's enough from me for now. Let me get my thoughts together. And in a way, you're calling out the person for not giving you time to think about it. But you're doing it very gently. You're sort of managing up. You're addressing the person's request, but you're also coaching the person to give some time for thought. So here are my initial thoughts, and I will provide a little bit more. What you'll hear from me by 5 p.m. tomorrow or whatever it is, if I have anything else to add.
This is so interesting. I saw there are people who kind of like take that niche in their profession of translating everyday language to office language. And I think it's super helpful because I imagine myself in a situation like that, and maybe it doesn't come to my mind to say, these are my initial thoughts, but let me get my thoughts together after the meeting, get back to you.
Can you imagine doing that at the dinner table?
Right.
These are my initial thoughts, and I'll put it in a memo for later.
That's right. Having coffee with a friend and he asks me a question, let me get back to you. So is there a mindset shift? Is there a resource to kind of like, hey, this is a category of statements to say in this kind of situation? Like, I think it's fascinating having this ability.
So give yourself a break, first of all. I certainly say this in my presentation classes, that as people are very concerned about what they look like in front of people, that the people you're about to teach or share your message with have not heard that string of words from you in the past, because you're not in the past. You're right here, right now, delivering that message. And so give yourself a break, because they don't know what you're going to say. They're not certain how it's going to be delivered, and they're probably grateful that they're not the ones having to deliver it. So if you're an expert in what you're doing, fine, you can speak to that. But even if someone surprises you with a question in front of a group of people where everybody's an expert, then allow yourself the space and the grace to think on it a little bit of time. Sort of buy a few minutes, buy a few hours, so that you can get yourself together. One suggestion certainly is, when you get back to your office, honestly answer the question. Just go back and say, like, did I hit that, or do I need to clean something up? Did I miss it? Do I think I could do better next time? I noticed that this is like the 7th time it's happened. So let me see if maybe I can approach the person, because they're not getting the message. I can approach the person to ask them, could you send the agenda ahead of time? Or if you have any questions, could you send it to us ahead of time? Not only would that make the meeting more efficient, but it would also reduce all the surprises.
I like that a lot. Go back to the office and kind of ask myself, like, do I need to clean something up? Did I hit that? Do I need to clarify and revisit it? That's really cool.
Yeah.
You teach something called about stress reduction, about talking back to our own thoughts.
Yeah.
I would love it if you can expand on that a little bit.
So the idea came from children will talk back to adults. You can't make me. That's they stomp their feet. And we continue being children throughout our lifetime. That part doesn't change. We're still children inside. There's a sense of wonder in us. There's a sense of excitement. There are things that catch our fancy. And so because that's still there, it's actually okay to talk back to the thoughts that are not helping us. And so perhaps this is the part of the podcast that's a little bit woo-woo, because here I am talking back to myself in a dark room somewhere. What is that about? No, what it really points to is those moments when you have doubt, those moments when you're maybe about to step up on stage, or that moment when you're about to send that really important email to someone, or that moment you're about to step up in front of your faith community and share a message, or that moment when you're about to change lanes in a car and you're just not certain because you're newer to this, or you're not sure if they're going to believe you, or you're not sure that you're the expert.
Yeah.
Talk back to those thoughts. They put me here. I believe in myself. Nobody else is going to do this right now. Nobody else is changing the lane for me. No one else is giving this presentation. They chose no one else. I'm the one delivering the message. I believe in this. Let's do it. And so you give yourself a bit of a pep talk, but you're also talking back to those thoughts that give you doubt and fear.
That is really awesome. So what I'm noticing is that sometimes these thoughts, we consider them as facts. They're unchangeable. But the idea of talking back is like, oh, they're actually, we can change them. We can massage them around.
That's right. Yep.
And
so it's like, as a child, no, I don't have to do that. I don't have to have fear. I don't have to be stuck in this lane. I don't have to stay in my seat. Talk back to that to say those fears that we think are fact, you can destroy them through thinking.
That's really interesting. And I was speaking to a friend yesterday, actually, and he was telling me that we were speaking about something similar. And we were talking about how this kind of like pep talk, or challenging the thoughts that come automatically, is not something that we do once and then it's done. It's something that we have to, it's kind of like taking a shower, we have to redo.
Yes.
Right?
And sometimes more than once a day.
Right. Right.
It's
That's
absolutely
super.
true. Glad you hit the friend, because these thoughts will reappear, and we may hear them once here, once there, or when we keep encountering that same situation, like standing up in front of people. And it takes time. It takes time to work through this.
Yeah. It brings a point also that the people that we surround ourselves with, they become, in a way, they become voices, like their voices echo in our heads. And if they are positive and encouraging, these thoughts will appear softer and more diminished. But if the people are critical, maybe a little bit toxic, these thoughts will be more pronounced.
It's true. So these voices we surround ourselves with, or the people, I absolutely echo what you've said. They are either enablers or disablers.
That's right. That's right. I wanted to ask you a question on how to navigate or avoid negative conversations now that we're on this space of topic, right? With a coworker or a personal relationship.
So we can't quite avoid them unless we're avoiding the person, and then we start questioning whether that relationship is necessary. And then that's a different kind of conversation. The negativity keeps happening, then please do have a look at whether the relationship is worth keeping. Now I realize that some relationships we can't just get rid of. We can't just quit the company because the benefits are there, or this is what I'm trained for, this is what I'm supposed to do, or this is a temporary manager, whatever it is. We have a variety of reasons why we can't quite change immediately. And yet, if you do find yourself in a situation where you are having a negative conversation, or this person is consistently negative, there's an approach that I've used, and I've used it with friends and family and coworkers, and I made a deal with them. I bargained with them. We go through those stages again. First, it was denial, right? But I got to bargaining, and I asked them, "Hey, the next time we speak, could you and I just make an agreement, and let's do our best for it? When I ask you, how was your day? I want to hear one positive thing first. I just want to hear one positive thing. And then I'm ready to hear all of the negative things." Now, what I'm thinking inside is, you are always griping. There's never anything good for you. The world is ending. Traffic is horrible. You hit every red light. The bananas are not on sale. There's always something wrong with the world.
Right.
But I just want one thing. Just please give me one thing, because for me, with the negativity, it's starving me from a positive experience with you.
Right.
So instead, if we change that dynamic, or if we make that deal so that when we show up to that coworker and they're always negative, we say, hold on, just a reminder, one positive thing, and then I'll hear it, and then I'll hear it. Eventually, you will teach them that in your presence, we start with positives and then we go to negatives.
Yeah.
Another thing we can do is, when they come to you constantly with those negative stories, ask them, do you just want me to listen, or do you want a solution, or do you want me to coach you through this? Like, what? Instead of saying, like, why are you telling me this?
Yeah.
Just say, just signal to me what kind of conversation this is. Do you want solutions? Do you just want someone to listen? Do you want someone to coach you through to a solution? So do you want mentorship, coaching, counseling? What do you want? What do you want?
Yeah.
And because that helps both of you, really, because you'll arrive to that space, you'll know what the expectations are, and then you can leave that space without someone wondering whether it's over.
That's right. Yeah, I feel that this kind of question, hey, do you want me to, are you just venting, or do you want me to coach you? Do you want advice? It kind of puts the light back on them in a good way, because now they have a choice to be like, oh, you know what? I was just being a downer. I'm going to be more careful. Or they be like, actually, I wanted to vent, and you're a good listener, so thanks for listening. It's like, oh, so in both ways, it gets, I think, better.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And I appreciate when I can get to that stage in a relationship with someone, whether it's at work or personal or in the community. It takes a while to work this out between people, because it takes trust. I can't just meet someone for the first time and be like, well, what kind of relationship is this? Or what kind of conversation is this? To question that without having built the trust short circuits it, and becomes like, it sounds like you're bothering me, and anything you say, I'm not willing to listen to. And so that trust has to be built up first.
Okay, right, of the trust. So in the beginning of a relationship, if something like that is happening, instead of being kind of like going on the impulse and addressing it right away, maybe observe a little bit, build some trust, notice, is that person coming? Is it repeated the same exact way every time, or slight differences? Interesting. This way, not to shortcut short circuit the relationship or the trust that's being built. Very interesting. Okay, so you mentioned that a little bit earlier, work the problem, not the person. And I know in one of your teachings that I really like, honor the person, not the request. Do you have an example on that you can share to help us understand it a little bit?
Yeah. I bet you do too. We're constantly probably bombarded with requests from a variety of people. And so sometimes they come in the forms of managers or spouses or friends or just members of the community, neighbors. Neighbors asking something like, can you take care of my cat while I'm out of the country? Or a spouse asking, can you pick up the kids today?
Yeah.
Or a manager saying, could you stay late to help this project? The relationships that we build with people are so important, and yet honoring the relationship also honors yourself. So if you really can't take care of the cat, don't commit to it. If you can't pick up the kids, well, figure out what else you can do, because ending that relationship is going to be a little bit rocky. You're still going to have to deal with the kids. Yeah. And so when that manager asks you to stay late, perhaps saying something like, I understand that this is a very important project, and I know why you're asking me to stay late, because we've certainly had this conversation. This is also the day that, and then whatever the valid reason is.
Yeah.
And so you can honor the person by saying, I see you, I know what you're asking for, and I know you're reaching out with good intent. I can't honor the request though. So perhaps there's a meet in the middle somewhere. So I can't stay till 6, but by 5:15, if I can get out the door, that would be great. And what that means is if you and I can work from 4:30 to 5:15, I think we can really make progress, so that when I leave here at 5:15 and I know you have to stay later, up till 6, then you'll at least know what the next steps are, so you can really make progress. And so finding a way to honor that person, but not necessarily their request, it's tricky. It's tricky to separate it, because it feels like you're giving up on the person, but it's really just that request. And they'll come back to you again if you navigate this correctly.
Very interesting. So it requires the ability to not take it personally. And because maybe if somebody keeps requesting things that maybe it's obvious that I cannot do, or it's obvious that maybe I expressed, hey, I'm in the phase where I'm burning out with this project, and they keep requesting, or they don't seem like they're paying too much attention to that. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm being bullied. I feel like I'm being coerced, manipulated, whatever. Like, or like, I don't know if if it falls under microaggression, but having the ability to separate, to honor the person and not the request. It's like, oh, okay, this person is not bullying me. Whether they are or they aren't, maybe it would be beneficial for me to think that they aren't anyway, because this way I'm not a victim. And then when I'm not a victim,
consider though that perhaps there's a history here of I always come in on Sundays to take care of payroll, because that's the one day that it's finally quiet at the office and I can do that. And they sort of caught on to it. And so since you're doing payroll on Sunday, while you're here and the computer's processing, could you also look at these HR files for us? And, while you're looking at those HR files, we got to think about what we do with those vendors. I mean, you're here on Sundays already, so could you just take care of that? At what point in your history have you said no to allow them to know that, this was okay at some point, but it keeps stretching and changing, and we need to change what this dynamic is, or what we're allowing to happen, because I do this so that I don't have to stress on Mondays, so that I can take care of other requests, and I haven't asked for additional time off. And so rather than me coming in late on Mondays, I'm trying to take care of all of it. And so on Monday, I'll look at that relationship with the vendor. On Monday, I'll have a look at those HR files. And so you're honoring the request. You're just doing it at a different time, but you're also considering what that history is and what the relationship has been. Because when I myself do this behavior several times, then it does look acceptable. And so others will see that as a signal of, well, he's flexible. Or, and I've certainly seen this in organizations, well, you don't have kids. You can stay late. The people with the kids, they got to go to all the other things.
Yeah.
So that's still unfair. There's that value of fairness. It's still unfair, because if I had kids, what would I be doing? And so perhaps the people with kids haven't figured out where they actually do want to stay late and help with the project. And you just didn't ask them because I've allowed it to be an expectation between us.
That's right. Setting expectations. That's right. That's right. So one of my last questions for you is, I love Venn diagrams, and you teach that thoughts, emotions, and behavior Venn diagram and the overlap. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yes. Just putting it into focus in my mind. So when we think about something, we can have instant reactions to it. And so when I think of, say, a pizza, I'll have a reaction of like, oh, I'm suddenly hungry. This is exciting. So that might make me act to call the pizza place and order the pizza. It's a silly example of that thoughts, emotions, and actions. But when we get to sort of the serious side of it with business, if someone comes to you and you have this pre-existing relationship or this pre-existing thought of like, oh, there's Paul again. He's always negative. He's got nothing good to say. This is not going to be good. If that's your thought, your emotions will probably be resistance, maybe anger, maybe doubt. The emotions will be negative. And so the actions or the behavior that you take is, as soon as I arrive, you're like, I look busy. He's here. He's here. I don't want to deal with this. I do not want this baggage. He can park it somewhere else. I'm going to close my door before he gets to it. Sorry, I've got a meeting. I can't talk. And so this thoughts, emotions, behavior cycle then continues. If I don't actually address this, Paul, I notice that the interactions between us, I receive a lot of negative news from you, and it's consistent. I don't know if you've noticed it. It's causing me to react negatively to you when you just stop by for a chat about your weekend. And I'd like to change that. Can you help me with that? So the next time you stop by, could you start with a positive? I'm asking for that for my own good health.
Right.
It calls attention to Paul's negativity, and it also gives us a chance to reset the relationship. But it also looks at what your needs are, so that when you have thoughts in the future and you ascribe emotions to it, it won't be as negative when Paul comes around.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So it's thoughts that lead to emotion that lead to behavior. And the thought, if the thought is negative, is going to lead to negative emotion, negative behavior. But if the thought is positive, it's going to lead to positive emotion, positive behavior.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Negative. I suppose this is one of those things where, like, we always look for the negative. But the same thing happens with the positive. My neighbor here has a cat, and the cat loves to visit me. So anytime I think of the cat, I'm like, oh, I hope she comes to visit, and we get to hang out. So there's a positive behavior of me opening the door as soon as I see her outside my window. And so there's that. There's also the positive side of thoughts, emotions, behavior.
And to tie it back to what I think is a really good idea is honor the person, not the request. If that is kind of like a constant affirmation that I remind myself with, I think it's going to make my thoughts positive more frequently. And if a person, right,
you're sort of free not to worry about the relationship between you or this friction. You can consider, what the friction is really because I'm staying late, or they consistently ask me to do menial tasks like, could you bring the coffee? Could you bring the coffee? Could you bring the coffee? But why am I always the one? I'm not more qualified than someone else to bring the coffee. So in this case, I would love to bring the coffee, and I would also love to be the speaker at the front of the room. So let's see how we balance that and then switch someone else to doing the coffee.
Really cool. All right. I feel like books can be written on this, and they probably are. Honor the person, not the request. Right?
Yes. Yeah, I bet they are.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay. I know you're a big reader. So what are maybe 3 to 5 books that you recommend on the theme of the things we're talking about if somebody wants to go deeper?
Yes. So I can certainly mention the first one on my list would be The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. And this book has been so helpful for me as I've moved here to Saudi Arabia. What Erin explores, as if we're friends, what Erin explores. When you like the book so much, you become friends with it. So what I really appreciate that Erin explores is she looks at 8 different dimensions of how cultures work. And so in the US, we consider vice presidents and managers and first-time employees that just arrived. There's not too much of a hierarchy difference. But here in Saudi Arabia, it's a huge difference. Like if a vice president walked into the room, I would consider whether I'm in the right room, even though I was there first. And yet in the US, I'd be like, hey, Joe, did you need the room or what's going on? Like you could just address it. It's different. And so that's just one example of how cultures can clash. And if we don't realize that that's what's happening, it can cause really negative consequences or friction at least. And so I really appreciate how Erin Meyer looks at 8 different dimensions of culture in The Culture Map. Another book that I've enjoyed recently is named The Games People Play.
Yeah.
And this one definitely has a psychological bend to it. What the author looks, oh my gosh, I got to look up who the author is. Allow me a moment here just to look it up. I got to look at my digital bookshelf here.
Yeah. Yeah.
What the author explores, as I'm looking at this, what the author explores are all of the sort of games that we play with other people. And I don't mean backgammon and chess, but it's to that level of thought where we think about how Eric Berne
Okay.
is the who wrote it. It was written in the 60s in the US. And so we can think about sort of the culture in the 60s in the US as it was written. What he looks at is how people work together, and he calls it play. And so if we come into a situation where we're a group of people that want to identify together, we might say, oh, our spouses, they're just the worst. Let me tell you why. And everybody plays the game because that's the expectation. The rules of that game are everybody's got to pile in why their spouses are the worst. He never takes out the trash, and she never, she never makes bread, whatever it was, whatever the examples are. And so everybody plays that game. But as soon as someone wants to change that game and says, well, my spouse is great, I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Right.
People will turn on that individual and be like, that's not the game we're playing right now. But they use different words like, oh, no, we're just focusing on the negatives right now. So it'll remind you of the rules of the game.
Right.
So I appreciate how Eric Berne has really broken it down to the various games that people play and makes it sort of accessible to say, oh, I've been experiencing this all my life, but now I actually see the words that are being used here. So that's really useful.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I bet he offers solutions to potentially change the game or protect from a negative game.
Yes. And so let's talk about that example where we talk negatively about spouses or friends or whatnot. When you walk in and you see that happening, you just don't participate. When they say, well, what about yours? And you can be like, I don't have anything to add. But it's like putting gravel under their tires and they sort of spin out like, well, but they just aren't sure what to say because they expected you to play. And instead of playing, you're not telling them that you're not going to play with them at all. You're just saying, I'm not playing this game.
Nice.
And so short circuits that.
That's right. That's right. Not adding fuel to their fire.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely
really cool.
right. Really yeah. And so you asked for 3 to 5 different books. Another one is What is Your What by Steve Olsher.
Okay.
And it looks at what drives you, what makes you do certain things in life. Where do you find your passions? And so I appreciate that because we often, I'll speak about myself. As I was growing up, my parents encouraged me to explore. And so at one point I was studying to be a pilot and I thought, oh, this is my future. And then wouldn't you know it, about 9 months later, I was like, I don't want to be a pilot anymore. So my parents were not pleased, well, let's say. And they were displeased not because I gave up on a dream, but because I was so passionate about it at the beginning. And now what was the next thing? What's the next thing he's going to do? What does he want to do? What's connected to that passion? And so I continued with my degree in aviation administration instead of flight.
Okay.
And so I still use that administration and management science sort of thought process.
Yeah.
The what is my what, though, I discovered later. And so if that was my first sort of shift in gears from machines to people, then when I joined a startup, I learned I don't really like the finance stuff so much. I'm not as excited about building websites. And the internship program is kind of interesting to me. But the thing I really like is building presentations and sharing the message with people.
Nice.
And then I joined another organization and I learned, the training stuff, that's it. That's the direction I'm heading. And then I moved into the leadership and training. Nice. and the the management of it. And then from that, I moved to a bigger organization. I did that. And then I became a consultant on training and management and development. And now I find myself facilitating again because my what goes back to sharing the message.
Nice.
And so this excites me. And it's why I joined this organization to do this job, because it's what I'm called to do. It's what I really enjoy doing. It's what I will work extra hours for without feeling like a victim. And so What is Your What is a really good book to read for anyone trying to discover, I've been doing this forever, but now that I'm being laid off, I got to figure out what I'm doing as my next thing. Do I really want to work in that field, or is this the industry, or is this my chance to become something different?
Yeah, that is super cool. So I like to tie things together. So tying things to the beginning of our conversation, knowing our values,
Yeah.
and then knowing what is our what. This way we can use our values to get to our what.
Yeah.
And obviously the other things we mentioned, like all the all the tips and mindsets and techniques.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other books? Any other more books? These are great. These are great.
How about instruction manuals for how to plug anything in Saudi Arabia? Other books I've enjoyed just sort of reading for fun. I really appreciate reading nonfiction and the business kind of things. But one of the genres that really excites me is spy novels, and so I appreciate reading. And then also, as we go from books, I also appreciate watching shows that are about psychological thrillers or
Nice.
spy craft or whatnot. And that's my way to sort of decompress and see the world differently. And that allows me to consider, okay, well, if I was this person, how would I act? It allows me to get into their shoes, and so helps me see the world differently.
That's really interesting. Okay, Paul, what
Mm-hmm.
advice would you give your younger self, let's say 25-year-old Paul?
Oh, I guess I am slipping into finance now. I should have saved that money. I should have put it into the stock market.
Yeah.
Or these days, I should have bought some chickens for the eggs. Something. But more seriously, when we're young, the world is full of opportunities and choices. And so, if that person is 20 years younger than I am now, I was a very different person then. I was studying my MBA. I was thinking about what does the future hold for me. You know what? I had just finished my undergraduate. And so I was volunteering, and then I was going to study my MBA. And so I thought I knew a future for myself. And so the advice I would give to myself is continue exploring, definitely save some money here and there, but consider what these relationships are going to mean to you in the future, because those some of those relationships aren't part of my present right now, and I'm okay with that now. But back then, I stayed at jobs forever, thinking this is going to become something. This is something I can't wait for this. And it turns out the people around me that were saying, you got to leave. It's not healthy there. Like, it's not working. You're putting in all these hours and you're doing all these things. I don't know if it's worth it for you.
Yeah.
I wish I had listened back then, because they did speak with experience. I just had to walk that path myself to see it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I like that. Okay, another hypothetical question. If you were the
Mhm.
president of the planet, what adjustments would you make to make the world 5% better?
Oh, wow. Haas, 5% is huge. I think 5% of what are we at, 9 billion people? That's a lot of change. I think of the 1% principle, where if you can just do 1% difference, it would help. So what would I do? I would figure out why there are conflicts and then work to solve them, because sometimes the conflicts are just due to communication challenges. Sometimes the conflicts are because someone has ascribed something that shouldn't be there. So there's a sort of a minimalist view of, well, these people are less important than these people. And I would figure out how I could raise sort of everyone's stature. I couldn't do that myself. It would be a wonderful team of experts that I would put together. Of course, president of the world, 9 billion. It's boggling. And so 5% difference, it would certainly be done through education. I've enjoyed my education. I would certainly encourage that of the world. How can we get everyone fantastic education? And then I would also consider, how can we share resources more equitably? And so it would be not just the resources in the earth, but the knowledge that we have and the currency that we use, and the way that we see boundaries these days. And so in the US, you can't buy certain products, but you go to another country and you can get those products just fine. And so if president of the world, suggests that there aren't such boundaries, then those products and that knowledge and those resources can be shared. So I think we can get to 5% quickly if we don't worry so much about the boundaries, but also honor people's past and what their experience has been, while encouraging them to join that journey and see how they can contribute so that their voice isn't taken away. When we think about a variety of crises around the world, I think we can do a lot without me stepping into politics. I think we can do a lot to help people understand other perspectives and reduce sort of the noise and the chatter around why someone is wrong, but rather, how can I help everyone be right?
That's right. Phenomenal. I resonate a lot. Where can people find you, Paul?
So I am on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out, and my name's here on this podcast. I welcome questions and I enjoy conversations. I just mentioned on this podcast several times that I appreciate conversations. I happen to be in Saudi Arabia, so I am a few hours ahead of the East Coast of the U.S. or the West Coast of the U.S., just a couple hours ahead of Europe. But I certainly welcome anyone to connect with me and to communicate with me, because we've all taken our own walk, and I love learning from others as well.
Amazing. Paul, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for sharing the wisdom, the love, and the knowledge. And it's a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you, Haas. This has been so great. Thank you.